Tonight, let's delve into the world of medieval royals who ruled vast kingdoms by day and drifted into alternative realities by night. Before we embark on this journey, take a moment to like this video and subscribe only if you truly enjoy what I share here. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Where are you tuning in from, and what time is it there? It's always intriguing to see the global community gathering. Now, let's set the mood, dim the lights, perhaps turn on a fan for a gentle background hum, and let's ease into our exploration together. When you think of Queen Isabella of Castile, what comes to mind? You might picture a formidable force of political will. She unified Spain, backed an Italian sailor who mistakenly thought he'd reached Asia and commanded respect across Europe. Yet, beneath her iron rule and fervent religious devotion, Isabella managed another realm entirely, her personal pharmacy. It's a place that would astonish even the most dedicated wellness influencer today. Being a queen was no easy task. With crusades to organize, nobles to keep in line, treaties to negotiate, and countless plots against her, stress was a constant companion. So, what do you think Isabella did to cope with the overwhelming demands of her position in the 15th century? Imagine opening a cabinet filled with herbal remedies, a collection of medieval medicines that, while effective, might raise eyebrows in today's world. Take insomnia, for instance. In modern times, you might sip chamomile tea to unwind. But Isabella? She was served opium tea, a sleep aid so potent it could lull even the most restless warrior into a deep slumber. Facing the pressure of a diplomatic meeting, Isabella's doctors turned to cannabis-infused concoctions. After all, navigating international relations is perhaps best done when your stress melts away. Yet the real standout among her remedies was mandre root. In medieval belief, this root screamed when pulled from the earth, a curious sign indeed. It was thought to cure any ailment, though it could also sedate even the most anxious ruler. Isabella consumed mandre preparations as casually as you might enjoy a latte, doing so with a blend of confidence and just a hint of trepidation about possibly hallucinating an angel in the corner. Then there was henbane, a herb intended to ease the mind. In practice, it relaxed you so thoroughly that your thoughts might take a brief vacation, yet physicians assured that it clarified judgment. Because surely, nothing sharpens political decision-making quite like a mild medieval out-of-body experience. As you reflect on these ancient remedies, consider what they reveal about the lengths we go to for relief and clarity. Would you dare to explore such unconventional paths for peace of mind? Imagine Isabella, the queen who transformed the world map, sitting in her chambers after a long day. She cradles a cup of medicinal opium, pondering, could I truly run an empire and reach for the heavens at the same time? Remarkably, this was deemed perfectly normal. No one dared to whisper, Your Majesty, perhaps that's a bit too potent. Instead, they reassured her, this will balance your humors. In medieval terms, that meant we have no clue what we're doing, but this concoction sure knocks people out. Indeed, Isabella conquered kingdoms, initiated voyages, and reshaped continents, all while occasionally floating above her throne, thanks to the strongest herbal brews that medieval science could concoct. If medieval Europe had a contest for the most likely to indulge in questionable potions, King Charles the Bad of Navarre would have easily taken the crown. He would have accepted the trophy, while likely under the influence of something mixed by his court alchemists. Charles earned the nickname the Bad, not for being malevolent, but for making decisions that were wildly impulsive. His political strategies were chaotic, his alliances often unpredictable, and his personal wellness routine, well, let's just say it was anything but conventional. Imagine a medieval chemistry experiment that spirals into chaos or laughter. While other kings leaned on faith, discipline, or wise counsel, Charles placed his faith in alchemy, the medieval equivalent of science, albeit with a flair for drama. His personal alchemists were skilled in crafting potions that promised remarkable transformations. They claimed to enhance intellect, elevate mood, provide spiritual clarity, and even grant political bravery. On one unforgettable occasion, they even promised immortality. These concoctions boasted an array of intriguing ingredients: opium, hage, hallucinogenic plants, and exotic resins that had journeyed far beyond the reach of most commoners. There were powders that only the reckless would dare inhale. Charles didn't just sample these potions, he indulged in them with the fervor of a college student discovering energy drinks for the first time. The outcomes were nothing short of astonishing, sometimes even disastrous. One potion left him so euphoric that he attempted to negotiate peace with a tapestry. Another bestowed upon him visions that he believed were divine messages from the heavens. His advisors, ever the picture of composure, took notes on his ramblings while suppressing their anxiety, as the king spoke of conversations with imaginary diplomats. Isn't it fascinating how the allure of discovery can lead us down such unpredictable paths? Imagine a time when the boundaries of medicine were as fluid as the potions brewed in dimly lit chambers. Charles, a king burdened by the weight of his crown, turned to his court physicians. With their hopeful hearts, they assured him that these herbal concoctions would restore balance to his humors. Yet, instead of harmony, they unleashed chaos within him, affecting his emotions, disrupting his sleep, and clouding his judgment. Despite the turmoil, Charles continued to drink these brews, believing they were not mere indulgences, but essential strategies. When a potion filled him with courage, he would charge into battle. If it sparked paranoia, he would suspect his neighbors of treachery. And when a brew infused him with an unshakable confidence, he would propose sweeping changes that left everyone bewildered. Over time, even foreign ambassadors learned to read the signs. A calm greeting meant he had avoided his alchemical experiments. A greeting marked by sweat and trembling, on the other hand, signaled that negotiations could soon spiral into the unpredictable. Charles the Bad was not just a monarch, he was medieval Europe's most fervent potion enthusiast. In an era devoid of warning labels, he boldly navigated the realm of alchemical medicine, driven by either heroic curiosity or reckless abandon. Alongside him was Frederick II, the Holy Roman Emperor, and a man of many talents, a crusader, a philosopher, a lover of falcons, and a multilingual genius. Yet, he too had a lesser-known passion. Sampling any herbal or chemical substance, his scholars claimed could expand the intellect, which in the medieval world could mean just about anything. As you reflect on these intriguing figures, consider how their quests for knowledge and power shaped their destinies. Would you dare to explore the unknown as they did? Frederick immersed himself in a world of knowledge, surrounded by scholars from Europe and the Islamic realm. These men delved into astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and notably, experimental narcotics. They brought with them jars filled with powders, tinctures, aromatic oils, resins, and dried herbs that resembled the ingredients for an ancient celebration. Yet, Frederick's curiosity was intense, perhaps even reckless. While other kings might have questioned the safety of these substances, Frederick's mind raced with a different query. What happens if I take two? His scholarly advisors, despite their better judgment, encouraged this thirst for exploration. They genuinely believed that these concoctions could unlock deeper understanding. However, in reality, they often led to conversations with falcons, visions of angels with questionable attire, and long nights spent debating philosophy with individuals who had long since departed. Among his preferred substances were the aromatic resins and herbal vapors used by Arab physicians during surgery and meditation. Inhaling these fumes brought him tranquility and clarity, and if indulged for too long, they created the peculiar sensation that the very ceiling of his imperial chamber was breathing. In these fragrant, mist-filled spaces, Frederick pondered law, science, religion, and the curious allure of his own hands. Imagine a time when a figure so intriguing emerged that even the Pope referred to him as the Antichrist. Perhaps the Pope caught a whiff of the incense wafting from Frederick's tent, leading him to think this man sees God in ways we cannot accept. Frederick was not just a ruler, he was an experimenter, dabbling in hashish preparations brought to him by scholars who claimed these substances sharpened the mind. And indeed, they did, at least until Frederick's thoughts drifted so deeply into metaphysical musings that he completely missed a council meeting, all while seated in the same room. What's fascinating is how Frederick documented his experiences with each substance. He meticulously noted the effects, the sensations, the shifts in mood, and even his philosophical revelations. It was like medieval journaling, yet every entry likely began with, "Today, I have discovered that time is an illusion." His court learned to navigate these whims. If Frederick entered with a serene smile, they knew to avoid discussions about taxes. If he burst in, reciting Aristotle, it was clear he had indulged in a stimulant. And on those days when he strolled in, gently petting a falcon while pondering existence, well, that was just an ordinary Wednesday for them. Frederick was a brilliant mind, eccentric and unpredictable, and yes, occasionally quite high. If medieval courts had a rating system, the Byzantine palace would undoubtedly receive 5 stars for its ambience, lighting, and an overwhelming aroma of incense. No one embraced the aromatic lifestyle quite like Empress Theodora. She ruled an empire, navigated palace intrigues, and inhaled enough fragrant fumes to drift into another realm during morning prayers. In Byzantium, incense was more than a mere accessory. It was a cultural obsession, almost a governing force in its own right. As you wandered through palaces, churches, corridors, and throne rooms, clouds of scented smoke enveloped you, creating an atmosphere reminiscent of mood lighting, tailored for an empire. Theodora cherished these rituals. They were elegant and sacred, sometimes so overwhelming that they could make you forget your own name. The fragrances were far from gentle lavender oil. Think of blue lotus resin, known for its psychoactive properties, or opium gum, used to deepen contemplation. There were even cannabis oils burned as part of purification rites, and incense from Persia and Egypt, so potent that priests had to open windows to avoid floating away during their liturgies. Theodora did not seek to get high. She inhaled these scents simply because they filled her surroundings. In a palace where the air could be described as a fragrant soup, the effects were inevitable. Imagine Theodora seated on her grand throne, welcoming ambassadors from distant lands. As they step into the hall, their eyes water and their noses twitch, struggling to suppress coughs amidst a dense fog of psychoactive aromas that envelops the room like an enchanting mist. In contrast, Theodora remains perfectly poised, radiating an aura of divine wisdom, as if she were above the earthly realm. The ambassadors might have believed that Byzantine emperors were capable of levitation. Her advisors often claimed that Theodora experienced heightened states of spiritual awareness. This suggests that the incense was doing its job remarkably well, enhancing the court's rituals. Some ceremonies utilized such potent psychoactive resins that choir boys felt lightheaded, while monks reported seeing halos around everything, even the furniture. Theodora engaged in these practices with graceful composure, occasionally receiving visions or prophetic insights. The origin of these insights, whether divine, inspired, or simply the result of the incense, remains a topic of scholarly debate. In her private moments, Theodora's bathhouse rituals involved herbal steam infused with narcotic flowers, designed to relax the muscles and ease stress. If you gazed at the palace walls for too long, you might even feel as if they were breathing. Indeed, Theodora ruled her empire with keen political instincts and remarkable intelligence. Imagine a time when the air was thick with the scent of incense, so dense it could rival any medieval anesthetic. If there were an award for the most unexpected methods of seeking euphoria in medieval Europe, King Philip the Fair of France would undoubtedly take the prize. Picture him accepting this honor inside a grand cathedral, surrounded by priests swinging enormous incense burners that looked more like medieval cauldrons. Philip the Fair is known for various deeds, bankrupting the Knights Templar, clashing with the Pope, and as many chroniclers noted, possessing an allure that was hard to resist. Yet what often slips through the cracks of history is his remarkable dedication to church life. These were not quiet, serene moments of reflection. Instead, they were vibrant, elaborate liturgical celebrations where incense enveloped the gathering like a thick fog. This was no delicate sandalwood aroma you might find in a modern yoga studio. The incense of the medieval church was a potent blend of frankincense, myrrh, and psychoactive tree resins from the Middle East, mixed with benzoin, thorax, and occasionally herbs meant to inspire divine visions. In simpler terms, you might find yourself, if seated too close, witnessing angels performing a lively dance on the altar. And King Philip? He certainly wasn't lingering in the back row. Imagine a grand cathedral where the air is thick with the scent of incense and sunlight filters through vibrant stained glass. In the center of this sacred space sits Philip, enveloped in a swirling cloud of aromatic resin. He's not just another face in the crowd, he's the main character in this medieval scene, surrounded by chanting monks lost in prayer. As Philip inhales the rich fragrances, he might as well be tuning in to the divine. The priests believe this ritual elevates the spirit, and Philip takes this to heart, perhaps even a bit too much. Chroniclers describe him as deeply contemplative, often entering a trance-like state during Mass. You can picture him gazing intently at a single point on the wall, as if trying to decipher the secrets of the universe. Some diplomats would later remark that he emerged from these ceremonies glowing with inspiration, while others noted a more whimsical transformation, his expression glazed and mysterious, suggesting that perhaps the incense had a stronger effect than intended. Philip's devotion is striking. He doesn't attend Mass just once a week, but daily, sometimes several times a day. This dedication means he spends a significant part of his royal life enveloped in these sacred fumes, potent enough to tranquilize even the most restless of souls. Did he relish these moments? Without a doubt. Did it affect his decision-making? Let's consider this. Outlawing the Templars and arresting a pope are bold actions, perhaps not ones made entirely sober. Indeed, Philip the Fair ruled France with a mix of strategic brilliance and political ruthlessness, all while navigating a haze of holy smoke. Now, let's talk about Queen Eleanor of Aquitaine. She was many things: a political mastermind, a cultural icon, a mother of kings, and undoubtedly the queen of making medieval men quite anxious. Yet there's an aspect of Eleanor's life that often goes overlooked: her passion for wine. But not just any wine, medieval wine. This was wine enhanced with so many herbs it could rival a witch's pantry. Medieval wine wasn't the refined beverage you sip while pondering philosophy. No, it was more like grape juice with commitment issues. It was robust, unpredictable, and often infused with herbal additives meant to elevate your mood, spark creativity, or knock you out cold, depending on the mix. Elevate resided in Aquitaine, the wine capital of medieval Europe, a place where everyone had strong opinions about vintages, barrels, and grapes. In this land, the quality of court poets was often measured by the quality of their nearest bottle. Court records reveal that Elevain hosted lavish feasts where wine flowed freely, infused with intriguing additions like wormwood. This infusion led minds to wander, sometimes into unsettling thoughts. Other herbs like hip and rosemary elevated spirits, while poppy syrup ensured a deep, restful sleep. Cannabis seeds steeped in wine inspired poetic creativity, an ancient phrase that hinted at the dramatic verses awaiting creation. This wasn't mere recreation, it represented a refined aspect of courtly life, a sophisticated pretext for indulgence. Picture a court poet, trembling with nerves, performing for Elelani. She sits gracefully, her golden hair woven into a crown, sipping from a goblet filled with herb-infused Aquitanian wine, potent enough to rattle a Templar's armor. She nods slowly, weighing whether the poem resonates with brilliance or if the effects of the wine have dulled her senses. The troubadours reveled in this atmosphere, claiming that Eleanor's wine unlocked inspiration, a medieval euphemism for their unrestrained rhyming that followed a few too many cups. Whole poetic movements emerged from the overflow of wormwood into barrels. Yet Eleanor's use of these concoctions was not for mere escapism, it was a deliberate strategy. Creating a relaxed court atmosphere is often simpler than it seems. A court infused with creativity can yield more effective propaganda, and a diplomat with a slight buzz is much easier to sway in debates. Honestly, if you found yourself married to King Henry II, you might just need a drink as well. Elena's exquisite wine was not merely indulgence. It served as a political instrument, a cultural hallmark, and occasionally a pathway to spiritual enlightenment. Throughout her reign, she stood as one of the most astute and formidable rulers of the medieval period, even if her wine sometimes packed a punch akin to a small dragon. Meanwhile, King Louis IX, later revered as Saint Louis, was known for his piety, discipline, nobility, and charity. His spiritual fervor was so intense that many wondered if he was in communion with angels or simply overwhelmed by the herbal remedies of his time. The truth, likely a bit of both. Louis took his faith with utmost seriousness, almost to a fault. If holiness were a competition, he would have emerged the undisputed champion, prompting the Pope to consider drug testing for divine eligibility. However, achieving medieval sainthood required more than just acts of charity and crusades. It also involved the medicinal potions crafted by court physicians, whose approach often meant administering sedatives to anyone in their vicinity. When Louis faced stress, which was a common occurrence in the chaotic world of 13th century France, his doctors turned to spiritual calming treatments. In simpler terms, they prescribed powerful herbal potions that could make even a statue seem alive. His medical regimen included poppy-based syrups, affectionately dubbed sleeping cordial by monks, though modern doctors might warn you not to operate heavy machinery after taking it. He also used valerian infusions designed to soothe the mind, but they had a tendency to dull ambition and personality, perhaps even affecting an entire village. Then there were henbane extracts, said to unlock spiritual insights, but often at the cost of basic motor skills. Myrrh and resin were burned during devotions, creating a thick haze in the chapel, reminiscent of a medieval rock concert. The outcome? Louis frequently entered such deep contemplative trances that his advisors sometimes had to wave their hands in front of him to determine if he was experiencing a divine revelation or simply enjoying a moment of relaxation. Chroniclers, far too respectful to label their future saint as medicated, instead referred to these episodes as periods of severe devotion. This was their way of saying that perhaps the incense had a profound effect. Imagine a scene where intense prayer sessions stretch on for hours. You can picture him kneeling, motionless, his eyes half closed, enveloped in clouds of resin smoke. He whispers prayers, visions, or perhaps even ideas for recipes. The air is thick with incense, hissing like medieval humidifiers, drowning out any clear words. Those who attended these ceremonies, including foreign diplomats, reported feelings of euphoria, a lightness that felt almost divine. One ambassador even confessed that he lost track of his purpose and simply joined Louise in prayer. The incense worked wonders, but here's the fascinating part. Louise's judgment remained razor sharp. His decisions were known for their fairness. His justice system was admired, and his reforms had lasting impacts. It raises an intriguing question. Did the herbs enhance his saintly instincts, or was he the only person in history to govern a country while under the influence of a mild haze, outperforming his sober counterparts? Ultimately, Louis didn't seek this high for pleasure. He pursued it as a path to God, which in the context of medieval Europe was the most respectable reason one could have. Consider Emperor Basil I, who began life as a stable boy. His rise to power was fueled by charm, talent, and a series of promotions that certainly raised eyebrows. Yet, he ruled the Byzantine Empire with a confidence that suggested he truly believed God was on his side. Imagine stepping into the life of Basil, an emperor who often felt almost divine. This sensation was largely due to one of the empire's most cherished psychoactive treasures, the blue lotus. This fragrant flower, hailing from Egypt, has a rich history, having been used in rituals, medicine, and social gatherings. Essentially, the ancient world's preferred mild hallucinogen. Basil cherished the blue lotus, not for wild celebrations, but because his palace was filled with it. Incense burners, baths infused with its essence, perfumed oils, and ceremonial garlands. Blue lotus surrounded him, transforming his daily routine into a blissfully floaty sensory experience. Picture waking up as an emperor. You step into your bath, enveloped in the steam of blue lotus. As you stroll through the palace, the air is thick with its calming incense. You take your place on the throne, where attendants wave fans lightly brushed with blue lotus oil. By lunchtime, Basil isn't just ruling, he feels as if he's gently floating, emotionally and spiritually elevated. Chroniclers describe Basil as possessing a serene composure and a calm authority. It's no wonder when the air around you is infused with the soothing scent of an ancient spa, it's easy to remain at ease. Visitors to Basil's court often remarked on the ethereal atmosphere, a testament to the enchanting power of the blue lotus. Isn't it fascinating how a simple flower can transform a space and a state of mind? Imagine stepping into a throne room that feels more like a fragrant dream than a place of power. The air is thick with perfume, so much so that some envoys leave their meetings in a daze, forgetting crucial diplomatic messages. One Venetian diplomat even described his audience with Basil as akin to meeting a deity surrounded by a mist of scent. It seems the aroma was more intoxicating than he had anticipated. Was Basil aware of the effects of this fragrant atmosphere? It's hard to say for certain. Blue lotus was deeply woven into the cultural fabric of Byzantine rituals, especially among the elite. In the steamy bathhouses, the heated air, infused with lotus oil, created a dreamy haze, ideal for discussing the intricacies of politics, philosophy, or even deciding which general needed to be dismissed. What we do know is that Basil relished this aesthetic. He commissioned unique perfumes, reordered ceremonial incense blends, and preferred his halls to be filled with the scent of lotus rather than plain, unremarkable air. After all, why settle for ordinary oxygen when you can breathe in something that carries a story? Surprisingly, amidst all this indulgence, Basil governed effectively. He restructured the finances, bolstered the army, and established a lasting dynasty, all while enveloped in a fragrant, mildly psychoactive botanical cloud. So, Basil was not just the founder of the Macedonian dynasty, he was Byzantium's most elegantly relaxed emperor, blending governance with an exquisite sense of atmosphere. King Richard the Lionheart is often celebrated as a heroic figure, a military strategist, and a man whose preferred method of communication was the clash of swords. Interestingly, he spent only about 3 days of his entire reign in England. What many overlook is that Richard's life was a continuous stream of injuries, and medieval medicine approached these injuries with the finesse of a brick thrown through a window. Richard was perpetually engaged in battles, siege warfare, skirmishes, and tournaments. If violence were a loyalty program, he would have reached platinum status within a week. It's no surprise that he collected wounds like a medieval enthusiast. Arrows, swords, lances, both friendly and unfriendly fire, he encountered them all. Given that medieval medicine had yet to discover anesthesia more effective than bite this stick, Richard's doctors relied heavily on opium-based treatments. And when I say based, I mean almost entirely composed of opium. After battles, his medical tent resembled a medieval spa, run by someone who had only heard about modern pharmacology through vague whispers. Physicians concocted syrups, salves, and drinks so infused with opium that Richard likely experienced moments of spiritual enlightenment, often without intending to. As you reflect on Richard's remarkable life, consider the resilience it took to endure such hardships. Would you have the strength to face such trials? Imagine a scene where Richard lies on a table, wounded and frustrated, yet still issuing tactical commands. A physician approaches, holding a cup. "Drink this, sire. It will ease your pain." Richard replies, "Does it also make me invincible?" The physician chuckles softly. "Probably not, but you won't care anymore." Even during prolonged sieges, Richard turned to pain relief that included poppy wine, a sort of medieval concoction akin to NyQuil, which often led to moments of grandiosity. Soldiers would later recount how, after taking his medicine, the king would sit upright, calm and composed, emitting a faint glow. He would share brilliant military strategies, or at times recite poetry to the walls around him. One of his most notorious injuries occurred in 1199, when a crossbow bolt struck him in the shoulder. What followed was a harrowing medieval surgery involving heated metal tools, fervent prayers, and agonizing screams, all while he was sedated with opiates. Remarkably, Richard remained shockingly calm throughout the ordeal. This raises the question, was he truly superhuman, or was the opium dosage enough to tranquilize a cavalry horse? Despite the pain and chaos, Richard's leadership never faltered. He negotiated truces even amid sieges, led his armies with an awe-inspiring charisma, and instilled fear in his enemies, all while wrapped in bandages like a medieval scarecrow. It's clear that Richard didn't use these substances for recreation. Rather, they were a means to endure and lead, even in the face of adversity. In the realm of medieval warfare, the goal was often to dismantle the very essence of life. Yet, despite this grim reality, figures like Richard the Lionheart persevered, thanks in part to the potent herbal remedies of the time. Consider Queen Joanna of Castile, a woman often labeled as Joanna the Mad. History has painted her as emotionally unstable, perhaps too intense for the men chronicling her life. However, the reality of her situation was far more complex and deeply rooted in the medieval world. Her court physicians prescribed her medicinal concoctions so powerful that they could sedate an entire choir. Joanna faced immense political turmoil. Her husband betrayed her trust, her father manipulated her decisions, and her son confined her to a prison. Meanwhile, whispers filled the halls of Europe, reminiscent of a medieval reality show. In the midst of this chaos, her doctors believed the answer to her stress was to induce relaxation. In their eyes, this meant sending her on a tranquil journey far beyond the ordinary. Her treatments were varied and intriguing. Opium syrups were administered to calm her emotional storms, effectively saying, "Good night, Your Majesty." Cannabis oils were applied as soothing balms or placed under her tongue to ease her racing thoughts. Henbane tea offered a dual gift, a sense of calm and a curious awareness of the fascinating textures of the floor beneath her. As you reflect on Joanna's story, consider how the pressures of her life shaped her reality and how the remedies of her time sought to address her struggles in ways that might seem extraordinary today. Imagine a world where nightshade microdoses are the medieval equivalent of asking, "What if we accidentally poison the queen, but in a way that helps her?" In this unsettling reality, Joanna often finds herself without a voice. When she cries, they offer her a sedative. When she argues, they present her with yet another draft. Even when she tries to articulate complex political ideas, a court physician merely nods and insists, "Yes, yes, drink this." Joanna, intelligent and articulate, yet utterly exhausted, usually complies. Chroniclers would later label her as unstable. But let's be honest, if you spent decades being force-fed medieval anxiety treatments, confined away from your children, and surrounded by opportunistic political figures, you wouldn't exactly be gliding through life like a serene Disney princess. Picture her daily existence. Joanna sits by her window, frustration simmering beneath the surface. A physician rushes over, clutching another potion. "Your Majesty, this will calm your nerves." To which Joanna replies, "My nerves are fine. I need constitutional authority." The physician insists, "Yes, just drink the potion." Moments later, Joanna feels calmer, not happier or healthier, but undeniably calmer. The mixture she ingests is akin to being gently tackled by a very polite elephant. Tragically, as she becomes more sedated, the men around her assert that she is unfit to rule. Joanna finds herself in a haze, not out of anger, but due to the medication imposed upon her by a system that thrives on her silence. This isn't a choice she made. Rather, it's a choice made for her, ensuring she exists in a soft, medicinal fog. In a different time, King Henry IV of England faced a formidable challenge of his own: insomnia. This wasn't the kind of sleeplessness that comes from late-night scrolling. It was a heavy, kingdom-crushing unrest. Imagine a king lying awake for hours, his mind racing with thoughts of rebellions, unpaid soldiers, and the nagging worry of divine displeasure. His doctors, eager to provide relief, turned to the remedies of their time. Medieval physicians believed that when the mind is restless, it must be subdued by potent substances, drugs so powerful they could likely knock out a cathedral. Henry was offered a rotating selection of these medieval sleeping aids. One was poppy milk, a thick white opiate concoction that monks hailed as a blessing, while modern pharmacists would urge you to steer clear. Then there was mandre wine, made from a root that was said to scream when unearthed, a rather ominous sign for its safety. And let's not forget the henbane sleeping draughts, which could usher in calm dreams, chaotic dreams, or on occasion send you straight into unconsciousness. As you reflect on these historical remedies, consider how they echo the struggles of those seeking peace, whether in the past or today. Imagine yourself in a world of valerian and lavender steeped ale, a drink for those nights when gentleness is merely a facade. Picture being Henry at midnight. Your kingdom is ablaze, both metaphorically and sometimes literally. Suddenly, the royal doctor enters, holding a cup that carries the scent of a wizard's compost heap. This will ease your troubles, Henry, he assures you. But will it? You can't be sure. Yet you know one thing, it will definitely silence your complaints. The potions sometimes worked a bit too well. Chroniclers noted that Henry often dozed off at the most inopportune times, during council meetings, at Mass, and once, quite famously, in the midst of a heated debate about taxation. Perhaps that was intentional. These weren't the restful naps you might imagine. Medieval sedatives hit you like a trebuchet, sending you from wide awake to horizontal in mere seconds. When you awaken, it's often in a fog, disoriented and faintly glowing from the herbal remnants. As time passed, Henry's sleep issues only escalated. Stress, illness, and the relentless tide of politics transformed him into a man reliant on these medicated potions. Each new rebellion called for a stronger dose. Each political misstep meant another concoction brewed with urgency. Ironically, Henry wasn't a weak ruler. He was competent, strategic, and stubbornly effective in his reign. Take a moment to reflect on this. What does it mean to lead under such pressure? How does one navigate the weight of responsibility while battling the shadows of sleepless nights? Perhaps, like Henry, you might find yourself seeking solace in unexpected places. Insomnia turned him into a restless figure, irritable and pacing the halls at night like a ghost in its own castle. So, Henry IV spent much of his reign caught in a cycle of exhaustion and the haze of potion-induced slumber, a king ruling England while relying on the medieval equivalents of sleep aids. Queen Catherine de Valois, mother of the Tudor dynasty and an unwitting architect of much of England's royal drama, had her own unique way of handling stress. Her method was nothing like the gentle eucalyptus mists of today's spas. Instead, Catherine preferred the medieval approach, fumigation therapy. This involved sitting in a small heated room, essentially being slow-cooked in psychoactive vapors. Fumigation chambers were all the rage among the medieval elite. They were designed to cleanse the body, soothe the spirit, and balance emotions. However, in practice, they resembled herbal hotboxes created by someone who had never heard of proper ventilation. Catherine's chambers filled the air with cannabis resin, opium-infused oils, henbane smoke, and various other mysterious herbs that physicians insisted were medicinal. Yet, none could explain why everyone stumbled out, often walking straight into door frames. Picture Catherine stepping into the chamber after a particularly taxing diplomatic encounter. She sits with an air of grace, embodying the essence of a queen, ready to relax. As the attendants close the door, it seals shut like the purse of a medieval tax collector, ensuring privacy. They begin to light the herbal mixture, and soon the room fills with a thick aromatic smoke. It envelops you, making you wonder if the walls are melting or if your troubles have simply vanished. In just moments, Catherine feels a wave of relief wash over her. In the language of the past, this translates to a royal decree. You likely won't feel much for at least 2 hours. Her physicians lovingly wrote of how the fragrant fumes eased the humors, relaxed the womb, and liberated the mind from sorrow. In modern terms, it seems they stumbled upon aromatherapy, perhaps with a hint of the narcotic. There are times when court attendants must gently guide Catherine out, as she loses track of time, engaging in deep conversations with the furniture. One chronicler, in a polite fashion, noted that after these sessions, the queen spoke with a sense of gentleness and contemplation. This is a delicate way of saying she was utterly floating. Even ambassadors took notice of her transformation. One envoy from Burgundy described Catherine as serene, luminous, and just a bit unsteady. Another remarked that conversing with her felt like speaking through a warm cloud. Isn't it fascinating how such moments of tranquility can transform our very essence? These men weren't poets, they simply endured the effects of second-hand exposure. Interestingly, fumigation was recommended for enhancing romantic vitality. Yes, that kind. Given that Catherine famously wed Owen Tudor in secret and went on to establish a new royal lineage, one could argue that the fumes might have worked a little too well. While Catherine de Valois ruled with elegance and left behind a lasting dynasty, a significant part of her emotional equilibrium may have stemmed from spending time in a room filled with enough herbal smoke to calm even the Archbishop of Canterbury. King Alonso I, known as Alonso the Wise, earned his title not solely for his own wise decisions, but for the company he kept. He surrounded himself with scholars, astrologers, translators, poets, magicians, anyone who could impart knowledge, whether it was astronomy or the art of brewing a trance-inducing herbal tea in the palace basement. Alonso was eager to learn. He believed that wisdom came from 3 sources: books, the heavens, and whatever concoctions his court philosophers presented to him. With medieval scholars often experimenting with consciousness-altering herbs, Alonso became an unwitting participant in many of Iberia's intellectual experiments. Imagine stepping into the vibrant world of Alfonso's court, where the air is rich with the scents of various herbs. Scholars gather, sitting cross-legged on plush cushions, sharing scrolls and concoctions in a harmonious blend of knowledge and exploration. The atmosphere is alive with curiosity as they engage in deep discussions about the cosmos and the mysteries of life. Alfonso, ever the diligent observer, takes meticulous notes as if preparing for a divine examination. His interest in these herbal brews isn't merely for pleasure, it's a quest for understanding. He believes that substances like mugwort can open the mind to the stars, allowing him to see constellations winking back at him. He microdoses mandrake, convinced it brings clarity to his mathematical thoughts. Picture him in this scholarly setting, listening intently as a scholar introduces a new herbal blend. "Your Majesty," they might say, "this one encourages astral insight." Alfonso's eyes light up at the prospect. Perhaps this blend could assist him in his ambitious project, rewriting the legal code of Spain. Indeed, during this period of mystical inquiry, Alfonso produced Spain's most influential medieval law book, the Siete Partidas. The philosophical depth of some laws suggests that perhaps a bit of herbal inspiration played a role in their creation. As you reflect on this, consider the delicate balance between knowledge and the pursuit of understanding that defined this unique era. Would you like to continue exploring this fascinating world, or perhaps take a moment to rest? Alonso dedicated himself to astrology with remarkable passion, often holding nighttime sessions beneath the stars. These gatherings typically followed his indulgence in a potent concoction known as vision wine, a blend so strong that it could easily convince anyone they understood the movements of the planets. Remarkably, his astronomical tables boasted an astonishing accuracy, suggesting that either his herbal brews were effective or that medieval Spain thrived on sheer chaotic brilliance. Visitors from afar described Alonso as deeply contemplative and intensely focused, yet often lost in thought for extended periods. In simpler terms, one could say the king had sampled another experimental tea and was now engaged in a conversation with Jupiter. But there's more to Alonso than his celestial musings. He was a brilliant mind, crafting poetry, commissioning translations, advancing scientific knowledge, unifying legal systems, and safeguarding ancient wisdom, all while occasionally teetering on the brink of consciousness. Then there's Empress Irene of Byzantium. She was many things: a shrewd politician, an occasional usurper, and a master at sidelining her rivals. Yet she was also a woman enveloped by incense to such an extent that her reign could easily be imagined as unfolding within a fragrant fog. If you've ever strolled past an overly enthusiastic incense stall at a festival, envision that, but with imperial policy at stake. Consider the complexities of these figures and the worlds they navigated. Would you like to delve deeper into their stories? In the heart of Byzantine life, both religious and political, ceremonial incense played a pivotal role. Irene embraced these ceremonies with unwavering seriousness. Her court was known for burning vast quantities of incense, frankincense from Arabia, myrrh from Ethiopia, and a variety of resins and herbs, each chosen for their unique properties. In the 9th century, the term vision enhancing held a profound meaning, suggesting that one might glimpse the divine or something that vaguely resembled it. When ambassadors graced her presence, Irene ensured they were enveloped in a majestic haze of fragrant smoke, thick enough to obscure an entire battalion. As diplomats entered her throne room, they found themselves blinking and coughing softly, navigating a space where the furniture had become nearly invisible. In the midst of this aromatic storm sat Irene, poised and serene, like a tranquil deity bathed in light. Chroniclers often depicted her as radiant, spiritually elevated, and unfazed by the worries of the world. This calm demeanor might be attributed to spending her days surrounded by incense, potent enough to dull the senses. She likely approached the pressures of political life with the same quiet acceptance as a spa client, enjoying hot stones, perhaps even experiencing mild visions along the way. Her private chapel, where these rituals intensified, was a sanctuary of even greater depth and atmosphere. Irene cherished her long devotional sessions, where the air was thick with the sounds of chanting monks, the flicker of candlelight, and the rich aroma of incense. These incense burners didn't merely release a gentle fragrance. They billowed forth clouds like volcanoes, each puff seemingly crafted to bless those present. The priests moved gracefully, their gestures filling the space with a sense of the divine, transforming theology into a visceral experience. One monk even claimed that Irene's prayers were accompanied by vivid visions. Depending on the amount of resin being burned, she might have glimpsed angels, saints, or perhaps even a talking mosaic adorning the wall. Whatever she perceived must have sparked inspiration, as she made some audacious political choices afterward, including the drastic act of blinding her own son to consolidate her power. It's clear that incense alone cannot bear the blame, yet it certainly contributed to her flair for the dramatic. Her bathing rituals were equally fragrant. In heated chambers infused with medicinal herbs, the steam was so intense that attendants often needed to pause, struggling to maintain their balance. Empress Irene wielded her power with a blend of cunning faith and resolute imperial authority, all while enveloped in a cloud of incense strong enough to elevate a basilica. Few medieval rulers matched the tragic and tumultuous reputation of King Charles VI of France, often referred to by the less than subtle moniker Charles the Mad, and his notorious instability stemmed not only from his illness, but also from the excessive amounts of medicinal substances his court physicians administered, much like medieval bartenders who overlooked the concept of moderation. Charles began his reign as a stable, intelligent, and charming leader. However, everything changed when he suffered a sudden mental breakdown while leading his army. In an instant, he transitioned from strategizing to attacking his own knights, convinced they were impostors sent to assassinate him. The reality of medieval burnout was severe. In response, his doctors resorted to their go-to remedy. They insisted, "Your Majesty, you need more herbs." Yet when medieval physicians referred to herbs, they certainly did not mean chamomile. Charles was given microdoses of nightshade, which raises a significant red flag. No amount of nightshade should ever be deemed micro in the 1300s. He was also administered henbane elixirs, believed to soothe turbulent thoughts, despite their side effects of mild paralysis and vivid hallucinations. Poppy syrups were consumed as casually as one might drink tea. Cannabis resins were burned in his chambers during periods of unrest, alongside myrrh and resin vapors, because if it worked for priests, perhaps it could help France's most troubled king. Their intentions were undoubtedly noble, and the outcomes were varied. Picture Charles wandering through the palace, convinced he was made of glass. He truly believed this. Meanwhile, attendants moved cautiously around him, carrying bowls of potent herbal mixtures that could stun anyone, even a choir boy. There was a strict rule in the palace: no sudden movements near him, as he feared he might shatter. His servants navigated his presence as if he were a delicate chandelier, anxious and fragile. Now, blend this fragile state of mind with continual doses of medieval sedatives that would leave modern psychiatrists in shock. You have a king drifting through reality like a balloon that has slipped from someone's grasp. Yet there were moments of clarity for Charles. In those rare instances, he displayed a heartbreaking awareness of his condition. But as soon as he showed any sign of distress, his doctors rushed in with yet another potion, promising clarity, but delivering more of a command to please lie down before you fall down. His illness was genuine and his suffering profound. However, the treatments often exacerbated his condition. By the end of his life, Charles VI was not so much ruling France as he was floating through it, caught in a web of madness, medicine, and a kingdom that hoped he wouldn't wander off barefoot into the courtyard once more. As we reflect on the life of Arminius, we encounter a figure shrouded in complexity. His journey began far from the grandeur of marble villas and the rhythmic march of legions. Born among the Cherushi, a people deeply connected to their forested homeland, Arminius grew up in a world shaped by flowing rivers and towering oak groves. The warriors around him held freedom in such high regard that they were willing to die for it. However, Rome had its own ambitions. In the late 1st century before the Common Era, the empire was steadily encroaching upon Germania, where the promise of peace often came at a steep price, one signed in blood. Tribal leaders were taken to Rome, not as prisoners in chains, but as hostages in a more sophisticated game of control. These young princes were raised in the capital, not as captives, but as insurance policies, ensuring their tribes would comply with Roman authority. Arminius was one of those chosen. Picture this: at just 8 years old, you are led away from your homeland, watching your mother fade into the distance, swallowed by the trees as Roman cavalry guides you southward. You aren't shackled, yet you fully grasp that your return home is not on the horizon. To the Romans, this was not an act of cruelty, it was a calculated strategy. They believed that if he grew up imbued with Roman tastes, loyalty, and ambition, he would return as a collaborator, a German body housing a Roman mind. In Rome, Arminius absorbed the language, the philosophy, and the art of warfare. He learned to navigate a world that viewed his own people as uncivilized. His education was a double-edged sword, equipping him with the skills to serve a powerful empire while simultaneously fostering a complex identity caught between two worlds. Imagine a young noble raised among the elite who dined with aristocrats and learned from generals. He observed the intricate dance of power, how it is created, commanded, and enforced. Surprisingly, he wasn't treated as a barbarian. Instead, he was offered comfort and education. Rome ensured that its hostages lived well, for comfort can be the softest kind of chain. Yet, even amidst this luxury, a deep contrast must have troubled him. Here he was, a noble of the Cherushi, listening to Roman instructors mock the tribes of Gerenia as primitive brutes. These were the very tribes that had sent their children as hostages to prevent their own destruction. They still whispered the name of Arminius at winter feasts, uncertain if he was alive or lost to history. As he grew into adulthood, Arminius transformed from a German prince into something more complex. Rome had molded him into a knight of the equestrian order, a trained commander who in theory owed loyalty to the emperor. He became fluent in Latin, disciplined in Roman military doctrine, and deeply aware of how the legions lived, marched, and ultimately died. Rome believed it had shaped him, that it had tamed him, but what it had actually done was far more perilous. It had taught Arminius precisely how to bring about its downfall. By the time he reached adulthood, Rome saw him as one of its own, a loyal subject, or at least someone who could pass in uniform. Imagine a boy, once plucked from the forests of Gerenia, now transformed into a polished officer of the Roman auxiliary forces. He stands as a knight in the equestrian order, the embodiment of the foreign-born commanders that Rome proudly showcased as evidence of its civilizing mission. Arminius dons the Roman cloak, wields the Roman sword, and rides alongside generals who believe he admires the very empire that shaped him. In truth, Rome has bestowed upon him genuine power. As a commander of auxiliary cavalry, Arminius has fought in campaigns along the Danube, quelling rebellions and testing his mettle against foes unaware of his rising legend. He has learned the art of warfare, how legions maneuver across open fields, how Roman engineers can fortify camps overnight, and how officers communicate orders with precision. Perhaps most crucially, he has come to understand the overconfidence of Roman commanders when faced with those they deem inferior. Every victory Rome achieves imparts knowledge to Arminius. Each battle sharpens his instincts. He has even earned the distinction of citizenship and the esteemed equestrian rank from Emperor Augustus himself, a badge of honor that many Romans would have coveted. To the outside world, Arminius appears as the ideal success story of assimilation, a barbarian transformed into a Roman, a living testament to imperial ideology. Isn't it fascinating how appearances can be deceiving? Imagine a man who can effortlessly sit among Roman elites, reciting the works of their poets, all while commanding respect from soldiers. Yet Rome made a crucial error. They underestimated Arminius, believing he had forgotten his roots. During his time in service, he caught whispers from the northern frontier. He learned of Rome's tightening grip on Germania, where tribes faced humiliation at the hands of corrupt governors. Lands were annexed without so much as a nod to the locals. To Rome, these tribes were not allies. They were mere property to be claimed. Taxation, disarmament, and puppet leaders soon followed. For Augustus, Germania was just another conquest waiting to be claimed. But for Arminius, it remained home. Thus began his double life. By day, he rode alongside Roman officers, projecting loyalty with a smile. By night, he reassessed everything Rome had taught him, not as lessons for serving the empire, but as tools for its dismantling. The irony was almost poetic. Instead of being Romanized, Arminius had been transformed into a weapon. He became a soldier who bridged two worlds, the discipline of Rome and the fierce spirit of Germania. Soon, Rome would discover that this combination was more dangerous than they could have imagined. When Arminius finally returned to Germania, he did not arrive as a lost wanderer, but as a distinguished Roman officer, the kind of man governors embraced, expecting unwavering loyalty and compliance. As his boots touched the familiar soil of his homeland, you sense the stark contrast between the polished marble of Rome and the raw earth of the tribes. Germania is a land that does not easily yield. The rivers continue to flow as they always have, and the oak groves whisper their timeless secrets. Yet, beneath this familiar landscape, you can feel a tension in the air, sharp enough to taste. Rome has promised an alliance, but what the tribes experience is occupation. Publius Quintilius Verus, the Roman governor, views his role not as a caretaker, but as a conqueror. He imposes taxes, a foreign concept to tribes who believe that true wealth lies in honor, not in coins. His enforcement of Roman law comes with an arrogance that surpasses his understanding of local customs. Courts, punishments, and demands for tribute spread like a rash, irritating every chieftain from the Weser to the Rhine. While Rome believes it is bringing order, to the Germans it feels like a slow suffocation. Arminius perceives this immediately. The chiefs who greet him carry both pride and a quiet desperation. These are men who once stood tall beside his father, but now they whisper their grievances in the shadows, wary of Roman spies. They turn to Arminius, eager to hear what he has witnessed in the capital. Was Rome truly invincible? Was resistance a lost cause? His responses were thoughtful and measured, concealing the growing fire within him. Verres, blind to the deeper truths, admired Arminius. Here was a German who spoke flawless Latin, a warrior who had faced Rome on the battlefield and who grasped the essence of Roman discipline. In Verres's eyes, Arminius was a valuable asset, a bridge between cultures, someone capable of calming the tensions in the region. Little did he know that Arminius observed him, not with loyalty, but with keen calculation. Arminius understood what the Germans had yet to confront. Rome did not negotiate. Rome absorbed. Today it was about taxes and courts. Tomorrow it would mean disarmament, labor conscription, and generations of hostages. His people were living on borrowed time. Germany needed a leader, not a diplomat or a negotiator, but a strategist, someone who could penetrate the heart of Rome. Arminius recognized, with a clarity that would alter the course of history, that he was the only one capable of fulfilling that role. Rome had returned him to his homeland, unaware that he carried their doom within him. He understood that revolutions do not begin with loud proclamations. They start with quiet listening, patiently uncovering every complaint, every insult, every wound inflicted by the occupying force, revealing a deeper pattern beneath the surface. He travels from tribe to tribe, attending councils, enjoying feasts, and sitting beside chieftains who have grown bitter under Roman rule. Some have had sons conscripted into auxiliary forces, while others have lost their lands to Roman administrators. A few simply resent the idea of answering to men clad in metal skirts. Yet they all share one undeniable truth: the tribes of Germania have never been more united in their anger. But fear looms large. Rome appears invincible. 3 legions guard the region, disciplined and armored, led by Varus, a governor whose incompetence does not diminish his overwhelming military power. The tribes have fallen to Rome before. Why should this time be any different? Arminius holds the answer. Unlike any Germanic leader before him, he understands Rome's weaknesses. He knows how legions march and how they react under pressure. He recognizes how supply lines can be disrupted and how commanders often trust maps more than their instincts. Most importantly, he understands how overconfidence can blind even the most seasoned Roman officer. He begins to whisper the unthinkable. Rome can be defeated, not in open battle, that would be suicide, but in the forests where trees close in and cavalry becomes useless, in the mud where heavy armor turns soldiers into stumbling statues, and in narrow passes where legions cannot deploy into their perfect formations. Germania is not just home, it is a place of opportunity. It was a weapon, but for a rebellion to succeed, unity was essential, and unity relied on trust. So Arminius gathered in secret with leaders like his father, Segum Malavendus of the Marsi, and chiefs from the Bruci and the Chatti. Together, they forged the foundation of a coalition that Varus would never suspect. In councils illuminated by flickering firelight, warriors leaned in as Arminius unveiled a plan that felt audacious, almost mad. The strategy was to lure Varus deep into unfamiliar territory during a staged uprising, then dismantle the Roman army piece by piece. Some chiefs hesitated. Betraying Rome was one thing, but coordinating an attack on 3 legions was another matter entirely. Yet, Arminius's confidence was infectious. His knowledge was sharp, and his conviction resonated deeply. Gradually, what began as resistance morphed into steadfast resolve. By the end of summer, the trap was set. The final task was to bait Varus, a challenge Arminius anticipated would be surprisingly easy. After all, deceiving a man who believes he cannot be deceived is often the simplest task of all. Arminius had spent enough time among Roman governors to understand one universal truth: the more incompetent the official, the more convinced he is of his own brilliance. Publius Quintilius. Varus was the perfect example of this rule. Imagine a governor sent to a distant land, tasked with bringing order as if he were merely transferring an office employee. Varus, the appointed leader in Germania, anticipated handling paperwork rather than engaging in battle. He thought that with a steady Roman hand, his own, the Germans could be civilized. Yet in his arrogance, he mistakenly believed that Arminius, a local leader, was a loyal ally. This assumption would become his downfall. Arminius skillfully began to weave a web of deceit. He whispered tales of a distant rebellion, of restless tribes questioning Roman authority. These weren't grand stories. They were just enough to prick at Varus's pride. After months of imposing Roman law on unwilling people, the thought of resistance was unacceptable to him. Arminius orchestrated this manipulation with finesse. He didn't shout or demand. Instead, he quietly reported concerns and offered his guidance to the legions. His calm demeanor reinforced Varia's belief in a narrative he cherished, that Rome had successfully transformed a German prince into a loyal subject. In this delicate game of power, it was the subtlety of Arminius's deception that proved most effective, drawing Varius deeper into the illusion that he was in control. As you reflect on this tale of ambition and manipulation, consider how easily pride can blind us to the truth. Would you have recognized the deception in time? The story of Varus and Arminius invites us to think about our own perceptions of loyalty and control. Varus took it all in. As summer began to fade, Arminius proposed that the legions advance into the Tutberg region to quell a supposed uprising. Confident in both his authority and Arminius's loyalty, Varus agreed without a second thought. He assembled 3 legions, the 17th, 18th, and 19th, along with auxiliaries, camp followers, merchants, and their wagons. This was no swift strike force. Rather, it resembled a cumbersome parade of men who saw the forests merely as a backdrop. Yet, not all Roman officers were so easily deceived. Suggests a Germanic noble, wary of Arminius, warned Varus directly. Do not trust this man. He plots against you. Varus brushed off the caution. His faith rested in paperwork, ranks, and Roman titles, qualities that Arminius possessed in abundance. As the march commenced, Arminius rode alongside Varus, his demeanor calm and his voice unwavering. He assured Varus that the path was safe and that the tribes needed Roman guidance. He echoed exactly what the governor wished to hear. Beneath those courteous smiles, however, the greatest ambush in Roman history was already in motion. The march began under a sky heavy with the promise of rain. While this was not an unusual omen in Germania, it was one the Romans should have heeded more closely. The Teutoburg forest stands dense and ancient, a place unwelcoming to those who prefer straight paths and open spaces. Rome thrived on the vast terrains where legions could stretch their might and discipline could dictate victory. Yet, in Germania, the trees loom like imposing walls. The ground becomes a treacherous muck, and visibility shrinks until the world feels like a narrow corridor, alive with the sound of dripping leaves. You find yourself journeying alongside Ferris, who presses onward, unaware of the challenges ahead. He carries not just soldiers, but an entire entourage: cooks, smiths, merchants, servants, and animals. This isn't merely an army, it resembles a traveling administration office. The procession stretches for miles, winding through the forest like a silver snake ensnared by vines. At the forefront of this unwieldy march rides Arminius, a figure of apparent guidance, embodying the ideal ally. But just when he is needed most, he requests permission to gather allied Germanic troops, claiming it will help quell a rebellion he himself has concocted. Varus, believing in Arminius's loyalty, grants him this request. It becomes the last decision he makes that won't be tainted by regret. As Arminius vanishes into the shadows of the trees, the weather shifts dramatically. Sheets of rain begin to pound the canopy, enveloping the forest in a chorus of nature's fury. The wind howls through the branches, transforming the muddy ground into a treacherous swamp that masquerades as a road. Roman shields grow slick, and their sandals struggle for grip. Wagons topple into ditches, and the soldiers find their cohesion slipping away as they try to maintain formation in this punishing terrain. The Germans could not have asked for a more perfect stage. Hidden behind branches, trenches, and natural ridges, warriors from various tribes lie in wait, men that Arminius has rallied over months of secret meetings. Their bodies are painted, their weapons poised, and their fury is heightened by years of humiliation under Roman rule. They watch silently, letting the Romans sink deeper into the forest, deeper into vulnerability, deeper into the trap from which there will be no escape. Meanwhile, Varys believes he is marching toward a minor revolt. Little does he know that the revolt is behind him, above him, and surrounding him on all sides. In the heart of the dripping green labyrinth, Arminius raises his arm, the signal he has awaited for years. The forest seems to hold its breath. The Romans march blindly, unaware that Germania is poised to strike. The first attack does not unfold as a grand clash of armies. Instead, it begins with a scream, sharp and inhuman, echoing through the dripping branches. Imagine the scene unfolding before you. A sudden barrage of spears erupts from the tree line, piercing the Roman ranks. Men fall, bewildered, before they even grasp what is happening. The forest fills with war cries that bypass reason and strike deep into the core of fear. For decades, Germania has awaited this moment, and now it descends like a storm breaking free from its chains. The Romans, trained for open field combat, scramble to form their ranks, but the very ground betrays them. Centurions shout for order, their voices lost beneath the howling wind and heavy rain. Shields offer no protection against javelins raining down from above, and swords feel inadequate against foes who strike and vanish into the shadows of the woods. This forest is not merely a battlefield, it transforms into an execution chamber. Arminius's warriors strike from all directions, appearing and disappearing like phantoms. A few rush in for a swift attack, then retreat before the legions can respond. Others focus on the officers, severing command before it can stabilize the chaos. As you look around, the trees seem alive, shadows flickering, blades glinting, enemies attacking and retreating like whispers in the night. Wagons lie overturned, blocking the narrow path, adding to the confusion. What will happen next? Will the Romans find a way to regroup, or will they be overwhelmed by the relentless onslaught? Amid the chaos, horses panicked, trampling the soldiers beneath them. Supply mules broke free, scattering into the depths of the forest. Confusion reigned as the rain intensified, transforming the ground into a treacherous mire that trapped Roman sandals like a snare. Discipline, Rome's most formidable weapon, crumbled into chaos, leaving terrified men to struggle in isolation. Varys desperately sought to regroup, calling for a fortified camp. Yet constructing defenses amid such turmoil proved nearly impossible, while the Romans dug trenches and erected makeshift walls from shields and debris. Germanic warriors relentlessly harassed them, hurling spears into the half-finished camp until night fell. As darkness enveloped the scene, no relief came. The Romans huddled together, drenched and trembling, their ears filled with the taunting shouts echoing from the forest. The Germanic forces were not merely attacking, they were relishing this moment. Victory songs rang out, and drums reverberated like thunder, creating an eerie symphony that seemed to celebrate the Romans' impending doom. Varys struggled to maintain the facade of control, yet even he recognized the harsh reality. They were not just facing an enemy, they were being hunted. And Arminius, the man he had trusted, was the hunter leading them deeper into despair. By dawn, the Romans had ceased to march. You find yourself in a scene unfolding in slow motion. Exhaustion weighs heavily on those fleeing, clinging to them like damp fabric. Behind them lies a makeshift camp, resembling not a military stronghold, but rather the aftermath of a calamity. Varys attempts to restore some semblance of order, but his voice lacks the authority it once held. The men no longer see him as a general. Instead, they view him as a leader who has led them into chaos without a clear path to safety. Meanwhile, Arminius has returned to his warriors, no longer concealing his true loyalties. The calm facade of a Roman leader has vanished, replaced by the fierce demeanor of a Germanic war chief. His understanding of Roman tactics now fuels the destruction of entire legions. He skillfully divides his forces into agile units, strategically placing them at critical points along the Romans' escape route. Every ravine, every slope, every curve in the forest has been meticulously chosen. Germania has transformed into a carefully crafted trap, designed by someone who understands precisely how Roman formations operate and how to thwart their movement. As the Romans attempt to push forward, the path constricts into a narrow ridge, bordered by steep drops. It is here that the next wave of destruction begins. Germanic warriors unleash boulders and topple trees, crushing ranks and blocking any chance of retreat. Javelins cascade down upon them, but the Romans find themselves too tightly packed to effectively maneuver their shields. The air is thick with screams as chaos reigns. Soldiers tumble into ravines, slipping through mud slicked with blood. Varys tries to command his legions to break free, but his words dissolve into panic. The 17th Legion falters first, its eagle standard. The heart of the legion gets lost in the turmoil. When a Roman legion loses its eagle, it often signifies destruction. Here, it serves as the first sign of doom. The 18th Legion soon follows, overwhelmed by relentless attacks from above. Entire cohorts find themselves trapped against the slope, unable to climb, to fight, or to escape. The Germans strike with a fury fueled by years of humiliation, each blow a fierce rejection of Roman rule. The 19th Legion faces a grim fate, surrounded and gradually suffocated by ambushes. A legion once trained for open fields now meets its end in fragments, scattered through a forest that transforms every tree into a spear and every shadow into a lurking danger. Varys understands that he has lost more than just a battle. He has shattered the Empire's illusion of invincibility. Amid the wreckage of men and armor, a harsh truth settles over the survivors like a heavy shroud. This is not merely a revolt, it is retribution. By the third day, the Teutoburg forest has become a graveyard, a haunting reminder of what has transpired. The Romans faced a defeat far more profound than mere loss. 3 legions, once the pride of their empire, vanished without a trace. Their eagle standards sank into the mud, forgotten among the trees. Officers lay scattered, their broken equipment and crushed wagons mingling with the corpses half buried in the swampy soil. In the midst of this chaos, Varys, realizing the enormity of his failure, chose to end his own life, opting for death over the disgrace of capture. When news of this tragedy reached Rome, Emperor Augustus was said to have torn his robes in anguish, crying out, "Quintilius Varys, give me back my legions." But there were no legions left to reclaim. Arminius had not merely secured a victory, he had carved a wound in Roman history that would never heal. For the Germanic tribes, this triumph was monumental. Groups that had once bickered over grazing lands now stood united in celebration. Arminius was celebrated as a liberator, a figure who achieved what many deemed impossible. He humiliated the mightiest military force of the known world. The forest where the ambush unfolded became hallowed ground, a testament to the idea that cleverness and bravery could overcome the arrogance of empire. Yet, with victory came its own set of challenges. Arminius was transformed from a military leader into something much more complex. He stands as a symbol, one that inevitably draws rivals. Some chieftains worry that he seeks to crown himself as a king, a role traditionally despised by the Germans. His uncle, long an adversary, has repeatedly denounced him to Rome and stirred up internal dissent. This has reopened political fractures, and tribal leaders, once united against Varus, revert to their old grievances. Their fragile alliance crumbles under the pressure of personal ambition. Rome, though wounded, remains resilient. Germanicus, the celebrated general and adopted son of Emperor Tiberius, embarks on several campaigns to avenge the disaster at Teutoburg Forest. He triumphs over Arminius in numerous battles, regaining some lost eagle standards and demonstrating that Rome still possesses formidable strength. Yet, even Germanicus cannot completely conquer Germania. The land is too untamed, and the tribes too dispersed. Arminius manages to evade Rome's vengeance, but he cannot escape his own people. His rising power instills fear in rival nobles, who see in him the looming specter of monarchy. In 21 CE, they conspire to assassinate him. A liberator, he falls not to invaders, but to the very leaders he sought to liberate. Arminius passes away at the age of 37, yet his legacy lives on. He is remembered as the man who halted Rome's advance and ensured that Germania would never become a Roman province. When Qin Shang finally unified the warring states in 221 BCE, he sought more than just an end to centuries of conflict. His vision was to transform China entirely, its laws, infrastructure, identity, and borders. He yearned for a lasting peace within those borders, yet the northern frontier had no intention of cooperating. Beyond the fertile fields and newly claimed towns lay the steppes, home to the Shang, fierce horsemen who moved like the wind. They were raiders who struck swiftly, disappearing before infantry could even form ranks, and they rejected the notion of a fixed frontier. For generations, these northern nomads had plagued the states of Zhao, Yan, and Qin. Their cavalry could cover vast distances in a single day, burning settlements and seizing livestock. Now, with the first emperor presiding over a united land, he had little tolerance for an enemy that disrespected walls and the men who built them. His solution was nothing short of ambitious, brutal, and terrifying in scope. He commanded the linking and strengthening of the old border fortifications established by the vanquished states. What had once been a series of scattered defensive lines would evolve into a single continuous barrier stretching across mountains, deserts, and untamed wilderness. The concept isn't entirely novel. Centuries earlier, the states of Qin, Zhao, and Yan had experimented with walls, yet Qin Shang envisioned something far more ambitious. He imagined a spine of stone, earth, and wood, marking the northern boundary of civilization and keeping the barbarians at bay. This was not merely a military initiative. It was a symbol, a declaration of permanence from a ruler determined to make his reign eternal. However, even grand visions come with significant costs. The emperor faced a unique challenge with labor shortages. His solution? To employ those who had fallen out of his favor. Tens of thousands of conscripted peasants, soldiers, debtors, and prisoners were sent to the frontier. Many had been punished for voicing dissent against imperial reforms, failing to pay taxes, or even being related to someone who had angered an official. Now, they marched north in chains, uncertain of their fate, whether they would be building a wall, freezing on a mountainside, or simply disappearing from history. Qin Shang's architects assured him that the task was achievable. His generals claimed it would be worthwhile. His officials insisted that the people would comply, and so the monumental project commenced. This colossal endeavor aimed not only to secure an empire and define a civilization, but also to create a lasting monument that would endure long after every individual involved had passed away. Imagine a monument that becomes for many not just a wall, but a tomb. The order to construct this wall swept through the newly unified empire like a cold, sudden winter wind, impossible to ignore. Imperial officials arrived in villages, wielding wooden tablets inscribed with names, quotas, and dire penalties. Men between the ages of 15 and 50 found themselves compelled to serve. Farmers were pulled from their fields, artisans were yanked from their workshops, and soldiers were taken from their posts. Some accepted this fate, believing in the emperor's promise of fortified borders. Yet most complied out of fear, knowing that refusal could lead to death. Qin law, known for its harshness, laid the unforgiving groundwork for this wall. For countless families, the moment of conscription felt like a funeral. Mothers watched their sons leave, acutely aware that the northern frontier was a place even seasoned soldiers dreaded. Wives stood in silence as their husbands were led away in chains, uncertain if they would ever see them again. The emperor's decree made no distinction between the innocent and the unfortunate. Even those accused of minor offenses, like late taxes or unregistered tools, found themselves labeled as laborers, sent off to the most grueling work sites in the realm. Reflect on this moment. What emotions does it stir within you? The weight of loss, the fear of the unknown, and the harsh reality of duty. As you consider these lives disrupted by a single order, remember the faces behind the names. Each story is a thread woven into the fabric of history, a reminder of the sacrifices made in the name of power. Take a moment to breathe and let these reflections settle. Would you like to continue exploring this narrative, or perhaps take a moment to rest? Imagine a scene where convoys of prisoners, peasants, and soldiers stretch endlessly along the roads of Qin. Thousands march in strict formation, overseers barking orders as they move. Each person carries little more than the most basic tools: wicker baskets for earth, crude chisels for stone, and wooden poles for scaffolding. When they arrive at the frontier, they are met not with warm inns or tidy barracks, but with jagged mountains, barren deserts, and a relentless wind that seems determined to tear flesh from bone. The work begins before dawn and continues until the stars return. Overseers enforce discipline with whips and rods, while food is scarce, often just a meager portion of millet gruel. Water must be fetched from distant streams or melted from snow. Laborers who collapse are granted only brief moments to recover. The emperor demands speed, and that speed comes at a high cost. Yet, amidst this harsh reality, something unexpected emerges, a strange sense of unity. Soldiers who once fought for rival kingdoms now find themselves hauling stones side by side. Criminals labor next to peasants who have never broken a law. Under the rule of Qin, everyone shares one grim equality. No one is allowed to stop working. As the first foundations begin to take shape, a chilling realization dawns on the laborers, more unsettling than the biting northern winds. This is not just a temporary endeavor, it has become their new reality. For months, or perhaps years, as long as their bodies can endure, the wall continues to rise, and those who build it seem to vanish into its structure. The northern frontier starkly contrasts with the fertile heartland they once knew. Here, there are no familiar rice terraces, no gentle rivers winding through valleys. Instead, the Great Wall is being constructed in a land where nature resists human presence. To the west, the landscape gives way to the dry expanse of the Gobi Desert. Dunes shift like living creatures, swallowing roads overnight. Farther east, the Yin Mountains rise, their jagged peaks clawing at the sky, forcing men to cling to the rocks like tiny insects. Surrounding them are unforgiving plains, where Zheong scouts observe the construction from a distance, their cold curiosity palpable. For the laborers, this frontier feels like a form of exile. Winters come early, blanketing the ground in snow that never fully melts. Winds howl across the terrain, carrying sand that scours their faces and ice that splinters wooden scaffolding. Some days, they work wrapped in layers of woven grass, protecting their skin from the biting cold. Other days, they toil shirtless under the scorching summer sun, their sweat evaporating before it even has a chance to bead. Imagine a world where shelter is a rare luxury. Camps consist of little more than makeshift fabric tents, anchored by stones or hastily carved caves and cliffs. Fires flicker, small and precious, fueled only by the sparse shrubs and branches that the land begrudgingly provides. As night falls, the haunting howl of wolves mingles with the weary groans of men, creating a somber chorus that resonates through the valleys. Those who perish on the journey north are left by the roadside, while others who succumb during construction are often buried beneath the nearest mound of earth, sometimes without ceremony, sometimes without even a moment's pause in the day's relentless toil. Yet, the threats extend beyond the harshness of nature. The Thang lie in wait like shadows on horseback, observing the progress of their enemy's new barrier. They strike with sudden raids on supply convoys, cut down those who lag behind, and circle the work sites, taunting weary laborers with shouts and arrows. Work halts just long enough for Qin soldiers to fend off the attackers, only for overseers to force exhausted workers back into their lines. In this unforgiving frontier, the Emperor's purpose is served well. Here, escape is a distant dream. Here, men vanish without a trace, their names dissolving into the wind. Feel the weight of this reality and consider what it means for those who endure it. In this stark landscape of ice, sand, and stone, the first true segments of the Great Wall begin to take shape. It stands as a testament to power, constructed in a place where human endurance is pushed to its limits. The Qin Empire lacked modern cranes, iron machines, or sophisticated surveying tools for large-scale projects. Instead, it relied on the strength of countless human bodies and a ruler whose determination was unwavering. The methods of constructing the wall varied with the terrain, yet they shared a common truth. Every meter demanded relentless, back-breaking labor. In the deserts and plains, builders employed a technique known as rammed earth. They layered soil, gravel, and clay within wooden frames, with teams of men rhythmically pounding the mixture with heavy wooden rammers. The sound echoed across the landscape like the heartbeat of a great creature. The result was walls dense enough to withstand the elements and tall enough to deter raiders. However, the work was grueling. Shoulders dislocated, palms blistered, and men often collapsed in the dust from dehydration. In the mountains, the challenges intensified. Workers carved paths into sheer cliffs, struggling to haul stones up steep inclines that seemed determined to send them tumbling back down. Imagine the sheer will it took to endure this. Each stone laid was not just a building block, but a testament to human resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. Ropes snap and scaffolding gives way. Slabs of granite tumble like avalanches, crushing those caught in their path. To the overseers, these lives lost are merely a cost of progress. They wave forward, the next line of trembling workers, ordering replacements without a second thought. Carts pulled by oxen navigate treacherous terrain, But soon the paths become too narrow, too steep, or too muddy. When the animals can go no further, men take their place, pulling and pushing heavy loads, ropes digging into their shoulders until skin breaks. The air is filled with a cacophony of grunts, shouted commands, cracking whips, and the relentless pounding of rammers. Amidst this suffering, the wall rises steadily. Watchtowers emerge, serving as sentinels from which soldiers scan the horizon for the dust trails of approaching riders. Trenches are dug and barracks constructed. The wall begins to stretch across the frontier, a scar marking the boundary between civilization and the wild. But for those who toil to build it, the wall is not a feat of engineering, it is a chain. Each stone, every handful of earth, every timber hammered into place, carries the weight of memories, memories of those who fell along the way. You find yourself in a world where the emperor witnesses progress, while the overseers focus on discipline. Yet the workers perceive a stark reality. This wall they build demands more than just their labor, it demands their very lives. As the wall stretches further along the frontier, the toll on human life becomes undeniable. Though the Qin state seems indifferent, death is merely an expected cost of this endeavor. Officials meticulously log supplies, tools, and measurements. However, the records of the dead often go unnoted. A man who collapses from exhaustion is swiftly replaced, his body barely given a moment's respect. A laborer lost to a landslide becomes just another part of the earthwork. Illness sweeps through the camps like wildfire, bringing with it dysentery, fever, frostbite, and infections from untreated wounds. For many, survival seems a distant hope, overshadowed by the specter of death. Food shortages plague the workers. The harsh frontier cannot support large numbers, and the empire struggles to transport enough grain over vast distances. When supplies dwindle, soldiers eat first, overseers second, and the workers are left to fend for themselves, often with nothing to eat. Some resort to boiling grass into a bitter soup, while others chew on leather straps, trying to trick their bodies into believing they are nourished. Men weaken rapidly, and as their strength fades, the likelihood of becoming a casualty in the relentless toil increases. Punishments were harsh and public. A man who slowed the work could be tied to a post and whipped until he could either stand again or could not. Those accused of sabotage, disobedience, or attempts to escape faced immediate execution. Their bodies were often buried beneath the wall, not with any sense of ceremony, but simply for convenience. Whether this was a true interment in the wall or merely a careless burial, the outcome remained the same. The wall became a resting place for countless unnamed souls. Despite the severity of their situation, rumors circulated among the workers. Some believed that the emperor intended for the wall to endure forever, not merely as a military defense, but as a lasting monument to his reign. Others whispered that Qin Shi Huang was fearful of death and sought to create structures that would outlast him. For the builders, these whispers only fueled their resentment. They toiled not for a noble cause or for protection, but for the ambition of one man. Yet, even amidst despair, glimpses of humanity emerged. Workers shared what little food they had left. Experienced veterans taught younger men how to wrap cloth around their shoulders for protection. At night, they sang songs of their homes, reminding each other that they had once lived real lives before becoming faceless laborers in the emperor's grand design. The reality is stark. The wall continues to rise, while lives are lost at an alarming rate, far outpacing the empire's ability to replace them. Each new section of the wall stands as both an engineering marvel and a solemn reminder of the countless souls who have perished in its shadow. As the structure grows taller, the presence of the emperor looms larger. The laborers toil under immense pressure, but the soldiers stationed along the border pay a heavy price as well. They are not merely guards, they embody the authority of Qin, acting as extensions of the emperor's will. Yet, even their strict discipline cannot hide the truth. This is one of the most challenging assignments in the empire. Many of these soldiers once celebrated victories in Qin's campaigns of unification. Now, they find themselves perched on windswept ridges, gazing out at a horizon that offers only threats. Their duty is unyielding. Every watchtower demands constant vigilance, particularly during the night, when the Zhonghu are most likely to attack. Soldiers gather around flickering fires, gripping their spears, listening intently to the distant sounds of unseen horses. The biting northern winds chill them just as mercilessly as they do the workers below. Armor provides little comfort against the cold. In the grip of winter, cloaks become rigid, and even the act of breathing feels like inhaling shards of ice. Soldiers, despite having better provisions than laborers, still face shortages. Supplies struggle to make their way over snow-laden mountains, where ambushes lurk around every corner. When grain fails to arrive, soldiers find themselves hungry, just like the men they guard. Unlike laborers, who can collapse without dire consequences, soldiers must endure, for any sign of weakness at a guard post could jeopardize the entire frontier. Tensions rise between these two groups. Soldiers impose strict discipline, pushing laborers to keep working even when exhaustion makes their hands tremble. Yet many soldiers feel a quiet sympathy for the laborers, recognizing the shared fear in their eyes, a fear of a harsh landscape that can be as lethal as any enemy. Some take the risk to share small morsels of food or sips of water, knowing that if caught, the punishment could be severe. Then there are the battles. As the wall rises, new raiders launch sudden attacks, aiming to disrupt the construction. They strike isolated camps, supply caravans, and incomplete fortifications. Soldiers rush across ridges to fend off these assaults, often outnumbered, their footing precarious on loose earth or icy stone. Imagine a scene where many brave souls tumble from cliffs or are struck down before help can reach them. When the fighting subsides, the soldiers return to their posts, fully aware that their victories may be fleeting, while their losses are etched in permanence. The wall, intended for defense, transforms into a symbol of provocation, a stark reminder that Qin aims to assert its claim on the frontier. The soldiers stationed there grasp a painful reality. They are safeguarding a project still incomplete, still exposed, and still taking lives day after day. Even the esteemed army of Qin feels the heavy weight of the emperor's ambition, a burden they may never escape. As months turn into years, the construction of the Qin wall becomes a relentless rhythm that envelops the frontier. Each day starts the same way, a whistle from an overseer, the sound of tools being lifted, and thousands of feet trudging toward the next unfinished section. Progress is not measured in miles, but in the toll it takes. How many men will make it through the day? How many collapses can be repaired? How many new stretches can be forced into existence before night falls again? The wall does not grow in a neat, elegant line. It is a testament to endurance amid struggle. The path winds along ridges, tracing the contours of mountains and dipping into valleys where the earth is soft and pliable. Each region showcases its own unique style: packed earth in the west, layered stone in the northern mountains, and sturdy timber fortifications in the forests. This patchwork reflects the urgent pace of expansion, a relentless drive to build whatever can stand tall and to do so quickly. For the laborers, the progression of the walls feels almost surreal. One morning, they awaken to a barren ridge, just a scattering of rocks. By nightfall, that same ridge transforms, crowned with a rampart, crude yet imposing. It is the result of countless hands breaking, hauling, pounding, and shaping the landscape. Workers often gaze at the newly raised sections, caught in a blend of awe and despair. They are constructing a monument that surpasses them, yet they have no ownership of it. Their names will remain unrecorded. Their families will never know where they perished. Still, the work continues without pause. During the rainy seasons, mud becomes sticky, pulling shoes off feet and trapping carts until teams of men manage to free them. In the dry seasons, dust storms engulf entire work sites, forcing laborers to cover their faces with scraps of cloth, all while they continue to hammer the earth into place, relying solely on touch. Storms ravage the landscape, tearing down what has taken months to build. Earthquakes reduce sections to rubble, forcing laborers to face the same grueling tasks again and again, with fewer survivors each time. The Empire sends more men, fresh criminals, newly conscripted peasants, and political prisoners. Some arrive defiant, others filled with fear, but all eventually yield to the same weariness. They become part of a relentless machine, caught in the slow march of expansion. On the frontier, a man's past is forgotten. He faces only the wall ahead and the overseer behind. As the wall stretches further, laborers murmur a bitter truth. The wall grows, the empire grows, but we grow fewer. Yet the project continues, fueled by a single, undeniable fact. Qin Shuang demands a barrier that will transform the world. Reluctantly, the world is reshaped, stone by stone, life by life. As the wall creeps across the land like a deep scar, its purpose evolves. Qin Shuang seeks more than mere defense. He desires to contain his empire. The wall stands as a stark reminder of his authority, extending further than any messenger could travel in a single day. It serves as a physical testament to the emperor's reach, penetrating even the most isolated and desolate corners of existence. Imagine a landscape where a name is etched deeply into the earth, a name that demands recognition from all who gaze upon it. For many within the empire, however, this wall symbolizes fear rather than pride. Tales spread like wildfire about individuals taken from their homes for simply voicing dissent against imperial changes, condemned to toil on the frontier until their strength waned. Families would gather in hushed tones, reminding their children to obey the law, lest they too fall victim to the wall's grasp. Just the mention of the northern work sites could hush a room, as it was widely believed that those who disappeared into these camps seldom returned. The reality often mirrored the whispers. Even officials wielded the wall as a tool for their own gain. A rival bureaucrat could find themselves assigned to a remote section, a move that disguised a grim fate as a mere promotion. Nobles, too, tread carefully, fearful of offending the wrong minister. In this harsh realm, the wall served as a brutal equalizer, stripping away wealth, rank, and privilege. On the frontier, all bowed to the emperor alone. Yet the narrative spun by Qin propaganda painted a starkly different picture. Court poets and scholars lauded the wall as a mighty dragon, a sacred shield that protected the realm from chaos. Travel records celebrate it as the greatest engineering achievement in history. Statues and inscriptions honor the emperor's benevolence in securing peace for future generations. Yet those who labored on the wall understood the harsh truth. It was constructed with more cruelty than stone. Despite this, the wall fulfilled its purpose. The Shang, feeling unnerved by the rapid expansion, retreated further north, uncertain how to face a barrier that grew faster than they could dismantle it. Patrols reported fewer raids, and farmers along the inner frontier began to sleep with a little less fear. The Emperor's vision, despite its brutality, was reshaping the geopolitical landscape. However, beneath this facade of stability, resentment simmered. Every clenched fist, every unmarked grave,